Brittany at one point said, "Oh, I'm not even sure I want to be a drag racer. I might want to be a teacher."
Right.
And
And
then
that,
now she's a multi-time Top Fuel champion.
yeah, that was the possibly one of the greatest bait and switches of John Force's career.
One degree of separation. The lines all cross, the stories align. One degree of separation. Who's the next? You'll know in time.
Welcome to the One Degree of Separation podcast, the podcast that proves the theory of 6 degrees of separation and explores how we're all connected. Each season, I'll begin with one fascinating guest from my personal contacts, who after their interview will recommend someone from their own contact list. This creates a chain of connections and incredible stories. Follow along on your favorite podcast platform and on social media at One Degree Pod. Today, we're going to prove the theory by connecting to the high octane world of motorsports. My guest has been the driving force behind some of the sport's biggest names, helping to shape public perception and build dynasties. From his time at the Texas Motorplex to his years as the PR director for the legendary drag racing team John Force Racing, he has a unique perspective on racing that few others have. Allow me to introduce you to the owner of Werner Communications, Elon Werner. Elon, welcome to the show.
Ryan, thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited. I love the idea for the show. So
Yeah,
I'm
thank you very much.
super excited to catch up with you and just kind of talk a little racing, talk a little PR. So let's get going whenever you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about how you got started in motorsport PR and what drew you to the role.
It was it's a crazy story like all these stories are. I was actually working for the Dallas Mavericks in the early '90s for Kevin Sullivan and Tony Fay in the PR department, and a mutual friend. I was an intern. Had mentioned back in the olden times, kids they used to have these things called sales lead lunches, where all the salespeople would get together and talk about potential crossover sales. And it was at one of these lead lunches that a Motorplex salesperson ran into a Maverick salesperson and just mentioned that the Texas Motorplex was looking for a PR guy. And Louise, who was the Maverick salesperson, was like, "We have a really good intern. Do they have to have any motorsports experience?" And they were like, "No." So I heard about the job, went down and interviewed with Billy Meyer, the owner of the track. Had no idea he was a former funny car driver. Had never seen a drag race live in person. My only familiarity was like watching Wild World of Sports as a little bitty kid, and like Snake and Mongoose and Connie Coletta. So Billy, after a couple interviews, he just decided he'd been hiring drag racing guys, trying to teach them PR. And he was like, "Let's just hire a PR guy and teach him drag racing." And that was what, 30 plus 40 years ago. And I'm now
Nice.
in the industry. So I had no real motorsports experience coming into the job. I just had PR experience, and I've just learned drag racing and NASCAR and IndyCar as I've just grown in the role.
Nice. Yeah, and I know from experience, the first time you see a drag racing event, it's unlike anything you've ever seen before.
And it was unique. The '90s, the Cowboys were super in the heyday, and as I was teaching George Reba and Dale Hansen and Scott Murray, Kurt Menefee about drag racing, I was also learning. So I wasn't. Sometimes when you're in motorsports or really any sport, you kind of have like an attitude, like I know everything. But I was like learning as I was teaching. So like my pitches were very basic to like George Reba of like, "Hey, there's this guy, John Force. He's a crazy person. He goes 300 miles per hour. Come down to the track and you'll get a great interview." And that
Nice.
was intriguing enough to get them to come down, and they saw it and, started covering the sport in earnest.
Yeah. So, what's a major misconception people have about the role of motorsports PR?
I think that it is that like all sports, it's like it's super glamorous. Like you're with race car drivers, you're traveling all over the country, and really it is even longer hours than your typical NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA game because they're all day events. It is you're outside almost the whole time, and it is loud and stinky and noisy, and you just invariably get filthy. Like all my wardrobe now is completely black because you
It's
rub up
not
against
always
race.
the nice, comfortable, not always the
No,
nice, comfortable media booth.
correct. And the first race I worked at the Motorplex, I wore my standard Mavericks uniform, khakis, white shirt, tie. And I come in and they're like, "What are you doing?" First of all, no one wears ties. Second of all, you're going to get filthy. And I remember after the first day, I threw like the shirt, garbage, straight to the trash can. Pants. I think I managed to get through 2 days with the pants, but at the end there was just so much rubber and stuff that basically all the clothes went in the trash. So that was kind of a unique, perspective on that deal of just you you brought an air of kind of what you thought the job was, and then you kind of realized, oh, this is a completely different world you're operating in.
Yeah. So now you mentioned obviously you've worked with the legendary John Force for quite a while. Tell us a little bit about him and what his personality is like off track that fans might not realize.
I worked for John Force Racing for about 15 seasons, and his person all he cares about is drag racing. And I tell people that I was fortunate enough to work with someone that was the very best at what they do. And whether it's John Force or Yo-Yo Ma with a cello or Mark Cuban or Steve Jobs, there's a certain amount of social retardation that comes along with that. John didn't learn how to do small talk. He loves two things, really three things: drag racing, his family, and going to see movies. I probably went and saw more movies with Force, and he would use them for motivation. He would like get storylines from movies, and we went and saw the movie Two Guns with Mark Wahlberg and Denzel Washington. It probably came out 10 years ago, and there was one scene where the line was like, "You fight with the guy you're standing beside." We went and saw that movie on a Thursday night in Seattle. He and I. He liked it so much. He liked that tagline. He took his team. We went and saw it Friday night. He took all three teams on Saturday night. And then on Sunday night, he took his whole family. So I saw the same movie with him 4 nights in a row. And he just loved the whole, you fight with the guy that's next to you tagline. So I think the greatest thing that people don't know is how much movies motivated John and how much he loved it. We went and saw The Revenant together, and I don't know if you remember that Leonardo DiCaprio movie set like in the
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio. I think he won an Oscar. He gets mauled by a bear. He rides a horse off of a cliff. Indians are shooting arrows at him, and I'll never remember. We walk out of that movie, and Forrest looks at me and goes, I got to be honest. He goes, we're really kind of a bunch of sissies. Like we would never have survived in that era.
That's
And
coming
I
from
was
a
like,
guy who regularly drives a 10,000 horsepower funny car.
correct. And it's been blown up, has been on fire, has been upside down. But he was just like, yeah, that's the bear mauling, I think is what kind of put him over the edge. And then another time I'd orchestrated a interview for USA Today, a big, massive interview with USA Today. Mike Hembry talked to us in Charlotte, and then he flew out to California and spent 3 days with us in California. On the first day, we knew movies were a thing for Force, so we went and saw. I don't know. I don't remember which Superman movie it was, but it was the one that he died at the end of, or looked like he died at the end of. And Force is a product of the Depression. Superman was his favorite superhero. He actually raced a Superman car, and the thought of Superman dying in this movie, Ryan put him into such a depression that it almost derailed the whole interview. Like he was
Wow.
just totally like, "Oh my god, I can't believe Superman is dead. I didn't think Superman could die." And it was like everything like the next 2 days with Mike was just like Superman, and just like everything had this class. So finally, just had to pull Force aside and say, "You're gonna blow this whole thing. You can be sad about Superman tomorrow when Mike leaves, but please just start faking it until he leaves, or we're all gonna be, it's gonna be the worst story ever." And he understood that.
Yeah.
But yeah, but
In-
I think the biggest thing is
Incredible
with
that a
Force is
movie
that
had such a big effect on him.
yes, yes. So that's the thing is movies are his life force, and they still are. Like he still goes to movies all the time.
Nice. And I've had the pleasure of meeting John a few times. I don't know if I've shared this story with you, but there's one story that always sticks out of my mind about him. I came out to the track in Sonoma in like I think it was 2009, 2010 or so, and I had a full size racing helmet that I wanted to have signed by all the John Force Racing drivers, all the John Force Racing crew chiefs. And John was doing a scheduled autograph signing one day. So I got in line. I had it all planned out. I had a nice silver paint pen that I wanted to use for the visor. I wanted him to sign right on the visor. And I get up there and John says to me, he goes, that pen's not going to look very good on that visor. Are you sure you want me to use that pen? I've got my own that you can use if you want. And I insisted. I was like, "No, no, no, I really want this pen. Use this pen." And so he obliged, he signed on there, and it ended up looking really faded, looked really bad, just like he'd expected. And so I ran to the, Simpson booth to have them replace the visor so that maybe I could run back and have him sign it again. And, I got to the Simpson booth, they used brake clean to actually clean it off, and they're saying the same thing to me, they're going, "Are you sure you wanna clean this autograph off there? That's a great autograph to have." And I'm like, "I'm gonna rush back there, and I'm gonna get it one more time." And they get it all cleaned off, and I run back there, and he's actually wrapping up his autograph signing right around that time. But he sees me stand in line and waves me to the front and goes, "Let me use my pen this time." And I did.
And I'm guessing it looked great.
It did. It did.
Yeah, he has signed millions of autographs, and
Yeah.
I he when diecasts, not that diecasts aren't big now, but there was a time when they were huge. And we went to Lionel, which had bought Action, and he signed 2,000 diecast funny cars in front of me in one afternoon. And the first autograph was just as quality as the last autograph. And they had it all down to a system because he had different cars he was signing and different colored pens. And he just basically stood there with a cup of coffee and just walked up rows and rows of tables and just signed cars. And I remember distinctly taking a picture of the first autograph because I was just curious. And the last autograph, you could not tell which one was which. And so
Wow.
it's
That's incredible.
he is a unique athlete personality, just person that he knew that you wanted something special, and he wanted to make sure you got something special versus most people I think would be like not even taking 2 seconds to consider the other side of that transaction.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you also had the pleasure of working with his daughters as well when they were first starting out and throughout their career. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to work with rookie drivers and how you prepare them for the media spotlight.
Okay, I'll give you 2 parts if that's okay. I'll give you the working with the Force daughters, and I started when Ashley was moving from Top Alcohol Dragster to Funny Car, and then Brittany and Courtney were in Super Comp, which is a kind of a starting category, and then they were moved on to Alcohol Dragster, and then obviously went on to successful Funny Car and Top Fuel careers. Working with the Force daughters, you're kind of in their dad's shadow. All 3 of them had different personalities. So Ashley was kind of the first trendsetter. She was the first one through the wall, and her personality was distinctly different than John. She's much quieter. She's a pleaser. So we have a great relationship now, but while we were racing and working together, it was up and down because she would agree to do interviews and then kind of run and hide from me when it was time to do the interviews. Because
Mm,
it was just a thing. And it was kind of, it's a process of, as the PR person, you present your driver an opportunity, and if they take it, that's great. If they pass on it, there'll be other opportunities. And Ashley just wanted to please the person asking. And also, John was basically, we have to do all the interviews. We have to do all the media. You're the first female funny car driver. You have to do all this stuff. And that was just kind of counter to her personality. Now, Brittany and Courtney had seen Ashley and their personalities were different. Courtney wanted to be a race car driver. She wanted to do everything. Brittany was more in the middle, but I learned of just like through Ashley of just communicating better of you don't have to do this. If you want to do it, we'll find something else. As far as rookie drivers, it's really about communicating the time it takes to find them interviews, execute interviews, and then grow, make them comfortable speaking. And that's the biggest thing, I'm working on now with Josh Hart, Spencer Hyde. They're really good communicators just when you're talking to them, but sometimes they just want to be guarded. They don't want to let out any secret sauce. And it's just getting them in a position where they feel comfortable telling stories. And the best way to get better at interviews, as you know, Ryan, from your extensive TV experience, is to do more interviews. So I
absolutely.
basically, with my rookie drivers, we would do every podcast. If somebody, reached out, I would check them out. I would look at their body of work, make sure they weren't too crazy. We did do some where the guy was literally doing the show from his mom's basement,
I know.
but you needed that repetition. And you also wanted, on the PR side, I wanted to give people an opportunity to grow their media catalog because you need people covering your sport. Every podcast had to start somewhere. Every newspaper had to start somewhere. Every TV show had to start somewhere. So if you kept doing quality work, I tried to encourage them by getting my drivers on letting other PR people know, hey, this is a good radio show. This is a good podcast. This guy does write good stories, to just kind of churn the machine. So really it's the rookie drivers are getting them comfortable doing interviews, and then also letting them know that most likely they're not going to be a superstar overnight, that you're going to have to do a grind. You're probably going to be the person doing the 5 a.m. TV live shot until you win some races, and then you can maybe get to the 7 o'clock slot.
Yeah. And I'd imagine too that at that stage of their career, they're not even completely sure they want to be part of drag racing. I remember in the show Driving
Hmm.
Force, that was actually what brought me into drag racing in the first place. Brittany at one point said, "Oh, I'm not even sure I want to be a drag racer. I might want to be a teacher."
Right.
And then now she's a multi-time top fuel champion.
Yeah. That was the possibly one of the greatest bait and switches of John Force's career. Was Brittany was totally content racing top alcohol dragster, sportsman category, very flexible schedule, no pressure. She was teaching at Hunter College. She had a teaching degree. She was getting certified. And her plan was, I'm just going to teach and race a handful of sportsman racers on the West Coast or whatever. And then one afternoon, Force was like, well, let's just have you make one run in Antron Brown's Top Fuel Dragster. We'll start the licensing process, and if you like it, we'll keep going. But if you don't like it, we'll stop. And I'm not making light of situation. Drugs are very serious, but it was truly like giving someone that was used to smoking marijuana crack cocaine. Once you go 300 miles per hour, there's no going back. Like she was like, I yeah, I have to do this again. It was like, and then all of a sudden now she's racing Top Fuel Dragster.
What's the difference in speed between the alcohol cars and top fuel?
Um, it is at that time it was really only about 35 or 40 miles per hour. The alcohol dragsters were running about 360, and Top Fuel Dragsters was running about 310 at the time. But it's the acceleration. It's the drags. Top alcohol dragsters were running like 5.5 seconds, and the Top Fuel Dragster were running closer to 3. So it's just like the sheer launch and the power and getting thrown back in the seat and all the stuff. It was just a much more intense experience that, I've been told once you do it one time, there's really no going back to alcohol dragster or super comp. It's just kind of, you really feel like your car is broken and you're just like plodding down the track.
Yeah, I can imagine that difference. So, pivoting back to you a little bit here now, in the age of social media where drivers can communicate directly with fans themselves, how has that managed to evolve your role?
It's changed it dramatically in some facets, in that a lot of people think of public relations, and they used to think public relations and marketing were the same thing, and they're different um, different cats in the same bag. Public relations is kind of free media, interviews. Marketing is more paid advertisement, strategy. They kind of overlap a little bit. Now there's social media, which is a little bit of both, but it's its whole different animal. And like you said, it's a direct conduit from personality to fans. And I kind of liken it to, and like when Twitter just started, John Force Racing was one of the first adopters of Twitter, and we really grew our following quickly. And John really grasped onto it when I kind of explained that essentially social media is a virtual rope line. Like as you're familiar, like at our races, the pits are open. Fans can come and watch the drivers and teams work on the cars, and there are stanchions, and you can just stand at the stanchion and have an interaction with the driver or crew people and take pictures. This is just a virtual form of that, and you have to work with the drivers to manage that, because you can have a positive interaction or you can have a negative interaction. And sometimes when you give your opinion about things, that creates, you know, public opinion now more so than ever, which is, all the things going on in the world. Some drivers have opinions, some basically throttle back their opinions because they have sponsor considerations, they have families, they just don't want to kind of wade into the fray of social media. So you're kind of a guide a little bit, and I try to communicate with all my drivers that you can say whatever you want. Whatever you're feeling, but know that there are consequences to that. And probably the worst thing about social media now is the catfishing aspect, and AI is a real problem, particularly with a lot of the female racers that, I've done some
Yeah.
work with Erica Enders, with Leah Pruitt, all the Force girls, all Force women. you know, there are people that are reaching out to fans saying they need money, particularly after John's accident in Virginia. They're
Mm.
popping up with the family needs money to pay for medical expenses. Please donate, and people gave thousands and thousands of dollars to
Oh,
scammers, and then
that's brutal.
showed up at races thinking they were in a relationship with Brittany or
Oh, wow.
Erica. And then it becomes a whole thing because they're like, oh no, I've been communicating with you. We're talking about getting engaged, and
Yeah.
I'm here to propose. And it is very, very scary. And on the PR side, you're just kind of being aware of that and kind of monitoring it and tracking it down and communicating with Meta and all, and X, just like, hey, this is a fake account, this is a problem. And it's just, I can never keep my Greek mythology straight, but it's like the guy that's just rolling the boulder up the hill only to have it roll back down, and then you roll it back up. It's just a constant. Just when you think you've whack-a-mole something down, another one pops up.
Yeah.
And it's Leah Pruitt let me listen to a video. It sounds just like her, and it's like a voicemail that a fan got from her saying, "Hey, let's meet at XYZ race." So that's probably no. There's my public service announcement on your podcast. No racer will ever ask you for money or gift cards or anything like that. If they're
Absolutely.
racing, if they're racing, they are financially capable to do that. They will not need, they appreciate your fandom, but they do not need your money or gift cards
Absolutely.
or anything like that.
Absolutely. Social media has its pluses and minuses,
Sure.
and lately there's been a lot of negatives.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the balance on the PR side is maximizing the positive and then minimizing the negative.
Yeah. Yeah. So, have you ever had to manage a PR campaign for a driver who's not performing well? How you
Oh,
handle that?
yeah. A couple times. It's always tricky. Mike Neff started racing funny car and lost in the first round 8 straight races. But luckily, he managed to lose all those races in the first round in 8 different ways. He crossed the center line, he hit the guard wall, he red lit, he had his steering wheel come. I mean, all these, so you can kind of lean on that a little, and it's part of a learning curve. It's harder when it's an established driver that's just in a slump. And you start talking about, I ran into this with a team I was working with about 3 years ago with Coletta Racing. We were just in a slump, but we started talking about, they did DHL is one of their big sponsors. We started talking about some of the DHL initiatives. In June for Pride Month, we built a whole Feeding America program, which is now grown into this massive opportunity where they give away millions of meals every season. So you start talking about, try to get them to do things at the races where they're like on the NHRA stage or the Yes program with kids. So you're talking about a driver being active at the races. And oh, by the way, they're working on the car performance. But it's a slippery slope of, you can only tell people, hey, we're working on our car performance for so long. And you just have to hope that the crew chiefs and the crew figure out whatever the issue is and then kind of come out of it. Like Cruz Pedregon just won recently, and it had been 55 races since his last win. So almost 2.5 years. So it's not uncommon, but you just want to kind of mix in a final, a win every year. But it's also incredibly, 20 cars are going to show up for a race, only 16 are going to qualify. So 4 guys aren't going to get to race. So you have to kind of balance that about why did that happen, accentuate the
Hmm.
positives. And then for the 16 that do race, it's like Final Four. Of those 16, 8 of them are going to lose first round. There's only one winner, and you just try to. I would have little tricks sometimes. This is a great PR move. If one of my drivers lost in the first or second round, I would wait obviously to send the release out until the end of the race, and hopefully they lost to like the eventual winner. And then I would write in my release that, John Force lost to eventual winner Ron Capps in the first round. Reading comprehension being what it is, a good third of the people would think, oh, he lost to the winner. He must be the runner up. Even though we clarify, hey, he's just, lost, but so things like that where you're just trying to, yes, we lost early, but we lost to the guy that eventually won the race. Would that have meant we would have won the race if we'd have beaten Ron Capps in the first round? Not necessarily, but it does take a little of the sting off of it. So you're also a little bit of the caddy mentality. Like, when you're a caddy with a golfer, you're in charge of positive attitude, not letting them get too down on themselves. So there is a little bit of um, pop psychologist with your drivers of just constantly trying to be positive. But then I have had some conversations where they've come to me and said, we're not really getting a lot of coverage. And I'm like, yeah, but we're also kind of sucking. And you're getting as much coverage as you can for a team that is losing first round consistently.
And one thing that's unique about drag racing compared to other forms of motorsports is it's very unforgiving. You make
Yeah.
one mistake and your day's over.
Yes. Unlike I've had conversations with Tony Stewart's drag racing now. I've had conversations with him about his level of frustration as that relates to that. Is like he could just make one mistake in his top field dragster, and like you said, he's done. Whereas in his NASCAR days or IndyCar days, if they had a bad pit stop or he missed his ingress or egress from a turn, he had a chance to make up for it. Even if he crashed, he could theoretically get back in the race and make up some ground. In drag racing, there are no do-overs. It takes a million things to go right and only one thing to go wrong to totally ruin your day or ruin your chance for a championship or making the playoffs. And there's not a lot a driver can do to actively affect improvement in the car when you're racing. It's reaction time. It's keeping the car in the center of the groove, but there's not anything, you might be able to have some strategy on the starting line as far as how you stage the car. But really, once the driver hits the throttle and they're steering for that 3.5 seconds, a lot of it is on the crew and the crew chief. And essentially, it's like making the right play call if you're an offensive coordinator.
Now, beyond the wins and losses and the rough days and good days, what's the most rewarding part of telling a driver story?
I think really seeing, honestly, this is a business. So getting the positive feedback from a sponsor, like if you get a story out there that, is maybe it's not so much has a positive racing spin, but really kind of gets the sponsor's message out there. Richard Gadsden's someone we work with who races for Vance and Hines. He's been doing some things with Big Brothers and Big Sisters. So pitching stories about him inviting Big Brothers and Big Sisters out to the race. Now he's starting to win. Now it's kind of dovetailing into Richard has become this more than just a pro stock motorcycle racer. He's an ambassador for the sport. And seeing that kind of build that program and seeing a driver grow from just being a driver to also showing, their passion, whether it's helping other people or dogs or cooking, things like that. That's probably the most gratifying is when you can say, hey, I have this idea. Let's start pitching the story and we'll slowly get some traction. And now you see it building momentum and other people wanting to get involved and people asking you, media outlets saying, hey, when's the next time Richard is bringing some big brother, big sister kids out to the races? We want to be sure we have them on the podcast to promote that, or we want to get pictures for National Dragster to promote that because that's a really cool thing he's doing.
Yeah, from my media perspective, that's obviously a big part too, because a lot of times they're not looking to cover the drag racing aspect of it. They want to know what else is happening
Yep.
that I can tie into drag racing.
Correct, because a lot of times they don't, and that's probably the trickiest part on the PR side is so many media people don't understand drag racing. It is incredibly confusing. There's even at just the professional level, there's 4 classes, and there's dragsters, which are long, skinny cars. There's funny cars, which are kind of similar to dragsters as far on the power side, but they look completely different. They have a weird name. Then there's the pro stock cars, which look like Camaros or Mustangs. And then there's motorcycles, and they're theoretically all on a level playing field as part of the Mission Foods drag racing series, the professional level. But then when you come to a race, there's like 9 other categories of cars running that look like your regular car, that kind of look like top field dragsters, that kind of look like funny cars. So explaining to someone that's out there, okay, yes, these are all drag racing, but it's almost like if you went to a baseball game and at that baseball game, you did 1 inning of Major League Baseball, then an inning of college baseball, then an inning of high school baseball, and then an inning of like T-ball. And then you kind of came back to another inning of Major League Baseball, kind of looped it around like that. And having someone say, okay, you're only here to cover the Rangers, but you're also going to get a fair mouthful of TCU baseball, Highland Park baseball, Joe's Rec League, and Timmy's T-ball team. How do you, without, you don't want to say these guys don't matter because in some cases they're the people that are going to build the sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the tricky part is on the media education side of you almost have to sequester them from some information because it is just like a cat and a laser pointer. There's so much going on. They just and they're naturally inquisitive. A lot of media are naturally inquisitive and want to know, and they see women out here racing, African Americans, Hispanics, octogenarians, like elderly people, little kids, and they're like, okay, well this guy's racing, or this. I just heard them say something about a husband and wife racing against each other. His father and daughters are racing. You know, it's a whole so much going on that you have to kind of just really focus in on. This is the story we're going to tell. If you want to come back and tell another story, we're drowning in stories out here, and it's just a matter of kind of finding the right person that wants to tell the story.
Yeah, and of course, if you've never been to a drag racing event, like a lot of these media professionals are, they're getting this experience for the first
Hmm.
time. I'll never forget, like, my first time of seeing a car warming up in the pit area and going, "Oh, let me go check this out,"
Yeah.
and then getting a face full of nitro.
Right. Yeah, it's a sensor it's a full assault on your senses, and I remember one time I was working with John Force Racing, we were in Sonoma, and we were warming up the Top Fuel dragsters, and we used to warm them up on nitro. So you get, like, the full force. Now they kinda warm them up on alcohol. It's not less expensive, not quite as sensory assaulting, but the way the wind was blowing, it was blowing the fumes kinda back into the pit, and I had a TV reporter and her photographer. And I was like, "Oh, well, let's just cut through here so we can get away from the fumes." And basically, it was like the end of Animal House. I just marched them right into a dead end, and the fumes just completely overpowered us. It was just like the word. And also, the other thing was the camera person had cans on that looked like professional ear protection. No, they were just regular headphones. So I thought he had ear protection. And that's when we also used to do the throttle wop, where they would like seat the clutch by like hitting the throttle. So just be like running the car, and then you would just hear this, wow. Well, I didn't realize this guy didn't. And then he just about jumped out of his skin. I felt terrible that they were like, the reporter had to go get wet wipes, had to redo all her makeup. It was just luckily again, we had Ashley racing. I think Courtney was racing at the time. So we had like a comfortable female environment for her to go and like go up into a lounge and had like some of the wet wipes and things to kind of like if we would have just been in Forces and Robert Heights, it would have just been a disaster because there would have been like, hey, here's a rag that may or may not be clean. And, there's a mirror that you can use like, in a tow vehicle. So it's things like that you just kind of look back on and go, this is such a unique environment to bring media out to that the level of education and communication you have to have as simple as don't wear white. And for the most part, they know not to wear open-toed shoes. But sometimes, you get in the media, you have the morning show hosts, which they're a completely different animal than midday and your evening reporters. Morning shows built for fun. So they want to come out and do zany stuff. So they may be, you know, have their bits and you just want to kind of work those bits into what we're doing. And it's tricky to other forms of motorsports. You theoretically could put a driver into a NASCAR and let them kind of drive it around or idle it. Same
Mhm.
thing with
You can't do
IndyCar.
that with a
You cannot do that with a top fuel dragster or, a nitro funny car. And that sometimes we took John's car to KTLA one time, had it on display, an actual race car, and we told him that. And they're like, hey, do you think we could fire the car up? And I was like, if we fired the car up where it's sitting right now, the front of that building is all glass. I go, it would blow 2 floors of glass into the building. You would think and they were like,
yeah.
"Oh," and so you kind of have that deal where when you're dealing with tracks and the marketing, but no offense to marketing people, but they're like, hey, we could bring the car out and we could fire it up, and then like it got the reporter in there, and I was like, we can't do any of that. We can have the car there, we can lift the body up, and the reporter can get in it, but we cannot
Yeah.
start the car. That's just a
Yeah.
that's literally a non-starter. And now they can get in it, we can lower the body, they can pop out on the top of the funny car, which is fun. But yeah, there's no starting of it.
Yeah. People who haven't been around it in person have no idea what it's really like. It's truly an incredible experience, or it could be a very terrifying experience for some.
Right. Yes, for sure. Yes. If you're not prepared for what it is, it can definitely catch you off guard.
Yeah. So, looking ahead, what trends in media do you think will have the biggest impact on motorsports?
I think the continuing evolution of social media, podcasts. You're seeing guys that are really establishing themselves with YouTube channels. One of my clients, Buddy Hull, we do a digital TV show called Talking Funny Cars with Buddy Hull. So just giving the opportunity to build your own media brand and have branded content beyond just a TikTok or Instagram, I think is just really a great opportunity for drivers. And now you're seeing more of them realizing, originally social media kind of let you control your own message. Then there was this area we're in now with the contraction of media outlets and just the sheer number of reporters and cameras. There's a little bit more reliance on PR people to provide information. And if you can provide quality information, a lot of times it makes air or they'll use it for a press release or things like that. Now you're seeing the opportunity for drivers to have consistent media shows. You see it with Denny Hamlin, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Clay Millican on our side, Buddy Hull at the Talking Funny Cars. So you're starting to see more of that come out. So I think that is a emerging trend to kind of have this entertainment element and the PR element, the racing element, which is good for sponsors because again, you're kind of putting yourself in all these different channels and it gives opportunity for more sponsor awareness and a little bit of a longer form.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all wanting the exposure to the social media generation nowadays.
Right. And it's interesting. I think there's a really interesting thing that's happening is attention spans are getting shorter. So you're seeing, more cuts or quick hits. But also there's like this back end like that we see with Talking Funny Cars with Buddy Hull, which is a 30-minute show where we're letting drivers kind of tell stories and talk for a little bit longer and we're getting new information. And I think that's the balancing act of if it's good content, people will watch it for 24 minutes of a 30-minute show. They'll watch it for 40 minutes if it's really good stories and you have some good video to back it up. Or they may just want 20-second clips. They just want to hear the funny little bit. It's a weird thing that the 5 to 17-minute window is where you lose people unless it's like super dynamic content. But that's what I'm seeing is it's short highlights or it's longer form is drawing people's attention or even like little mini series. Like even if it's like a 3-part mini series, like if you're telling a story about something over, a race weekend or 3 races, that'll holds people attention.
Yeah, everybody's just scrolling through their feeds these days, and it's
Yeah.
it's hard to get them to stop.
It is. And that is something that we're working on of it's how dynamic does it have to be? How provocative does it have to be? Are you breaking news? Are you talking smack on somebody? It helps, there's 2 comedians that have been going back and forth recently, Ronnie Chang and I can't remember the other guy, but they're basically kind of they're doing a 2-person comedy tour where they've built this whole persona that they hate each other. And they basically have been going on all the late night shows, all the comedy podcasts, basically just talking trash on each other to just create this aura that they hate each other. And then you come to the show and it's very funny because they're still trashing each other, but it's obviously mutual respect. But they, so having, there's a couple things I'm working on where I'm getting a couple drivers from the same category. My idea is to basically, they're just 2 totally different guys and basically putting them in the same environment. I'm hopeful that we can create some internet magic on that because they just have different views on things, they have different experience, but they're both really good talkers and they have no fear of over talking on each other. So not quite Get Up or Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, but something somewhere in the middle that you don't just want to throw a brick at your laptop.
So as we get to the end of the podcast here,
Mhm.
we've come to the part where you recommend our next guest. So without revealing their name, tell me a little bit about the person you're recommending.
Okay, I'm recommending this is someone that I've known for about 5 years that basically grew up in a rural Illinois, not with any means, dreamed of being in racing, but the way they got to racing, they were a professional power lifter. They started their own company, they're an entrepreneur, and now they're in a position to race, run multiple businesses, and they just also recently got married and right out of the gate had a kid. So he's new dad, So it's got his whole world in the last 2 years has completely, he's achieved all his dreams, and kind of managing that has really become an interesting dynamic as his business has grown into a multi-million-dollar business, his racing career starting to take off, and he's balancing marriage, and he now has a 1-year-old.
I really look forward to speaking with him. Thank you so much for your time, Elon, and thank you so much everyone else for listening. Check out episode 2, which is up now, to discover who the next link in the chain is. And also be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, or follow us on social media at 1 Degree Pod. Thanks again, Elon. Have a great day.
I appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you.